Hi everyone, welcome to my pool plan video in DFFOO global version of the game, and in this video I'll be covering the banners and events where Prishe will be a synergy unit. You can refer to the cropped infographic on the left hand side of the screen, which was derived from Jakematt's global forecast to see which events these are. In case you are interested, I will also be including the link to the full forecast from Jakematt in the video description as well. In case you are new to my pool plan videos, just a brief disclaimer about the purpose of the video. The whole idea behind these videos are for me to actually share my plans and thought process behind how I make my pool or skip decisions. This is obviously very heavily biased towards my playstyle and preferences, and I do acknowledge that there are many different playstyles and of course many different approaches to playing this game. So my preferences, playstyle and plans may not actually be ideal for you depending on what your preferences are. My recommendation is always for everyone to also do your own research into the character kits so that you can always make the best informed decision as to whether or not the character is suitable for you. Because of this, also what I'll try to do is always to focus a little bit more behind the actual thought process and to give a bit of explanation on why I decide to skip or pull certain characters. So starting off, what I'll do is have a quick overview of how I did on the last arc, which was Snow's LDBT arc. So there were 5 banners in total displayed here, and I went in only with tickets mainly because I already actually have surpassed the 999 ticket cap. So I've actually got a few hundred tickets sitting in my inbox and I have to use them, otherwise they will expire soon. Notably also, with Prishe coming out tomorrow, the banner is also released alongside Divine Bahamut, and there's also going to be a bunch of tickets from the summon bot grinding as well. So it's very likely that over the next few weeks I'll be focusing mainly on using tickets rather than gems. On Snow's arc, I skipped the Snow and Emperor banner. That's because I already have Snow and Emperor built. I obviously don't have Snow's BT, but I wasn't terribly interested in it, and I wasn't terribly interested in Liz as a DPS character as well, so those 2 banners were an easy skip. I pulled for Raijin because he is an excellent unit based on the merits of his LD and LD debuff, and I can foresee myself using his LD call quite a number of times, especially considering that there are many fights that have HP threshold attacks which his LD debuff can fully negate. Coming to Sice, I pulled for her as well because she definitely fits my playstyle, where I tend to have turn hogger units or feature big burst mode damage, both of which Sice can really add a lot of value in. Considering also the fact that she's an LD only unit, she doesn't really need a lot of investments, and you can do sort of like setup with her inside summon mode as well if you are thinking of doing low turn runs. So I went in with tickets for her, and I was very lucky that I managed to score her entire kit, including her 15, 35 EX and LD within the 50 tickets. So that was a very lucky day for me. Finally, we have a rerun banner with Xcaliblur and Setzer, and this banner was an easy skip for me because I have every single weapon on this banner, even including Xcalibbur's BT. Alright, so starting off, the first banner that I actually want to cover is actually not a banner in Prishe's arc, but in between Snows and Prishe, we did actually get one special banner featuring a rerun and triple LDBT of Noel, Locke and Noctis, so I thought I'd just include it in this video as well. I skipped this banner because I already have all of the weapons here except save for Noel and Locke's burst weapon, and I wasn't very interested in either of their burst weapons, and I felt that it wasn't a very good use of tickets or gems just chasing one of either burst weapons, so I ended up skipping this banner altogether beyond the free multi-pool. So my opinions on this banner is that it is a rerun banner featuring 3 LD and BTs. So there is a trade-off here. On the one hand, you have technically triple the chance of scoring any BT or any LD, considering that there's 3, but keeping in mind that if you are chasing only after a specific burst or LD weapon, your chances are still the same. So this banner may be of value if you're interested in more than one of these 3 characters, and if you're missing 2 or 3 burst weapons, because then technically your chances of getting at least one of the burst weapons that you're missing is considerably higher. This is especially true for newer players, where you will likely not have maybe even any of the weapons for all 3 characters. So you could maybe do a pull strategy where you go in until you get 1 burst weapon, because the chances of getting any one of the 3 burst weapons is actually 9% per multi-pull, so that isn't too bad. But you have to keep in mind that that is for any burst weapons altogether, and not rates for a specific burst weapon, in case you want a very specific burst weapon out of the 3. The trade-off, I guess, to consider is that as a rerun banner, all 3 characters will not be getting any upgrade or rework with this banner, so their kit still remains the same as when their LDBTs were released. They are still somewhat usable, so they aren't terribly bad characters, especially Locke's burst weapon does have some utility, and of course Noctis is very well known for his turn manipulation, and that still remains true to this day. Noel is a very good DPS character that can ignore defense and can also re-break the enemies, so all 3 characters actually do have some value. I think that if you aren't terribly interested in their kits, and if you've managed to get by without them, then there's really no good reason to pull. But if you feel that you really want to get any of their burst weapons, then perhaps this is your chance to do so. Alright, so finally coming to the first event in the Prishe's LDBT arc. The first event will be Divine Bahamut, and as usual there will be 2 banners here. The first banner featuring Prishe with her LD and BT weapons both newly featured, and there's also going to be a rerun of Fran with her LD. The second banner features a rerun of Yuna's LDBT and a rerun of Celeste's LD as well, and both characters will be getting tuning passes with this event. I'll start off talking about Yuna, Celeste and Fran first actually, because while those 3 units did get upgrades throughout their kit, especially with their C90 being introduced as well, their kit remains largely the same in terms of how they work. So most of the changes are made to actually just increase their damage output, such as increasing the number of HP dumps throughout their attacks so that their damage is more in line with the current meta. It doesn't mean that they are bad actually. It does mean that if you already have them and you know how they work, you can expect that their utility and their function remains the same, but their HP damage numbers will increase with the introduction of this event. Special note to Yuna, because she is actually a very strong aura bot character. So if you are fairly new to the game and you've missed out on pulling for recently released aura bots such as Ramza or Garnet or Kieran, and you want one to complete your roster, then Yuna is actually a great choice because her BT aura does provide very strong support auras to the entire party. Coming to Prishe, first of all, her rework significantly changes her S1 and S2 to change the amount of HP damage that they do, especially increasing the number of HP dumps as well. Her kit features multiple elements throughout her S1 and S2, namely Fire, Wind and Holy, I believe, and her EX actually imperils all her elements as well, so she will be able to self-sustain her damage by inflicting imperil. Her LD, and this is very notable, her LD and LD call has a very unique buff that doubles the brave hits of every party member in the fight. So for example, if you have an attack that does 3 brave hits before the HP dump, it will now do 6 brave hits instead. What is truly remarkable also in my opinion is that Prishe's burst aura also provides her 1 additional brave attack per brave hit that she does. So if you have Prishe with her burst aura and her LD buff up, the other 2 party members will be doubling their brave hits, whereas Prishe will actually be doing 3 brave attacks per 1 brave hit that she does, which significantly boosts her damage, as you can imagine. You do get the utility as well, even as a call ability. So Prishe LD call is one of the highest damage boosting calls in the game, and for this reason I feel that she's a strong candidate for pulling. You can always use her as sort of like your main DPS in the fight, but you know, if you want to use other DPS, you can also still slot her as an LD call ability. So overall I feel that she does provide quite a lot of value, and for that reason I'll be going in with tickets aiming to score her LD. The next event will be Shelke's Lost Chapters, and in this event Lulu will finally be getting her rework and her LD. Shelke's utility and function still remains largely the same, in that she specializes in a DPS unit that features a lot of free turns, and she has the added utility of being able to refresh all her skill ability counts and her debuffs, as well as being able to also get free turns after any enemy acts as well. Her changes are mainly increasing her damage. I think notably her S1 and S2 are now having 2 HP dumps each, and she now also has last stand included as well. On that note, Lulu's rework and C90 also changes her base kit and EX to have multiple HP dumps, so her damage is definitely upgraded. Her LD, which is newly introduced here, gives her instant 5 stacks of her trademark Dollmaster buff, and very notably the buff now enchants fire to all attacks, and this even includes elemental attacks. In case you are not aware, typically when you enchant an element to your party, this only applies to non-elemental attacks. So if any party member has an innate elemental attack, for example Lightning has the Lightning Elemental attached to her Spark Strike, that attack will still remain as their innate element, and the elemental enchant will not affect those attacks. Lulu's sort of mega enchant acts differently than other elemental enchant abilities, because she will attach the fire elemental to every single attack, even if it already has an innate element. So for example, coming back to lightning again, if an enemy actually absorbs thunder, normally anytime lightning uses Spark Strike, it will actually restore the enemy's brave. But with Lulu's mega enchant, Spark Strike will also have fire element, and if the enemy is weak to the fire element, Spark Strike will actually be doing elemental weakness damage. This means that Lulu now fulfills a very narrow niche where she will allow your entire party to hit 4 elemental weakness damage even in fights that absorbs elements, except of course if the enemy also absorbs the fire element. I have to admit that sounds to me like quite a narrow niche as well, because I don't really think that there will be many fights that would require this so-called mega enchant, and under most normal circumstances some sort of average elemental enchant and imperil would be sufficient already. But that being said, I think that's a very interesting utility to have, and Lulu is the only character with this so-called mega enchant, so I'm very much interested in it, at least to have it in my roster in some fights that may require it in the future. So for that reason, I'm going in for tickets aiming for her LD. The final event in this arc will be Sice event, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. But anyway, Sice is a new character in the game from Final Fantasy Type 0, and she is a dark melee DPS unit with a special stacking buff mechanic called Grudge. This buff has a maximum of 2 stacks, and she can increase her stacks by using either her S1, EX or additional ability, which each provides an additional 1 stack. She does reduce her stacks by 1 if she happens to get broken by an enemy attack. What happens with the 1 or 2 stacks is that all her attacks do get upgraded versions, so at 1 stack her attacks become the plus version of themselves, and at the maximum of 2 stacks she actually gets a plus version of all her attacks, which boasts significantly higher damage overall. Her LD also has a special debuff that does trap-like damage after every turn, so it's actually very similar to how Ace's trap works. So once you apply her LD debuff, and I believe it lasts for 12 turns, anytime any field turn happens, so either a player or boss turn, that debuff will tick down and deal damage as well, and that supplements her damage even further. Lan and Rain, the twins from World of Final Fantasy, is also on this banner, but looking at the changes that they receive, it seems to me to be very minor. So both their S1 and S2 will now be having 2 HP dumps, and their EX damage will also be upgraded as per their C90. But beyond that, the rest of their kit actually still remains the same. I actually plan to skip on this banner. First of all, I already have Lan and Rain fully built, including their burst weapon, which is also green from their debut some months back. But I wasn't really terribly interested in Sice. I was also thinking that in this arc I'm already pulling for both Prishe and Lulu, and I didn't really feel like I want to spend tickets across all 3 banners, so that also weighed in with my decision. I felt that if I did get Prishe and Lulu already, those 2 are also DPS characters, so having another DPS character in Sice I feel is sort of overkill. I don't need that many in my roster, and I do already have established DPS anyway, even coming to this arc. So I feel overall I'm very comfortable to just give Sice a skip. So on this part of the video, what I try to do is to sort of rate the newly released characters on this arc across 3 different categories, to give you an idea of how I will value them if, for example, you don't have enough resources to max or pull any of their kits. The way I prioritize characters usually tends to be across 3 different categories as outlined here. The first category I call as good value, which are characters that I feel will give a lot of value to your roster, even regardless of who else you already have, and generally these will be characters that I myself will be gunning for. The role fulfillment category are characters that are actually very good still, but I think value here is a bit more dependent on who you already have in your roster. So for example, if you already have established tank characters such as Zak, then you may really not need Celeste. But obviously if you're fairly new and you don't have any tanks built up, then Celeste's value will significantly shoot up. The consolation prize category represents characters that I feel who may not really add a lot of value to your roster, and while they may still work in endgame content, the idea is that even if you pull for them, there's a high likelihood that there would be many other characters that you should be able to use over them in content, making them more likely to sit on the bench rather than join you in the fight. This time, under good value, what I have is both Prishe and Lulu, and the main reason behind me placing them here is more on the unique utility that both their LD gives. So Prishe will be able to double your entire party's brave attacks, and Lulu will be able to provide your entire party with sort of mega fire enchant, which is enchanting every single attack, even if those attacks already have an innate element. So these two utilities is very unique to both Prishe and Lulu, and to me, I always want to sort of widen my roster and the access to abilities that I have, and for that reason both Prishe and Lulu are here in this category. Under role fulfillment, I have Celeste, Yuna, and Sice, and all three of these characters have very specific roles. As mentioned, Celeste's main role is as a tank, Yuna is a support aura bot character with additional utility of debuff cleansing as well, and Sice is a dark damage dealer. So whether or not to pull for them, I think really depends more on what other characters you already have. I've already covered Celeste, and for Yuna, if you already have Garnet and Ramza for example, there's really not a lot of need for her, unless maybe if you really want a support aura bot with the ability to also cleanse debuffs, then certainly Yuna has a lot of value there. For consolation prize, I placed the twins, Friend and Shelke here. The twins, I feel they are still very good at dealing AoE HP damage, so especially in fights which features 3 enemies, but at this point in the game there's already quite a lot of other characters who can do that, and you don't really need the twins anymore, especially considering that they didn't really get a very big upgrade in the upcoming event. For Friend, when her LD first debuted, her LD was quite notable for being a very good LD call ability because it inflicts debuffs across a whole range of stats, including defense, and very importantly also provides HP damage up. That being said, as of now, there are actually many other call abilities that will also provide defense down and or HP damage up, so her call ability is sort of one across many different ones, and I feel that if you really want to spend resource, you can just get another call ability that has HP damage up and or defense down. Shelke is somewhat of a turn hogger DPS with additional utility of getting free turns after the enemy turns. I don't really see a lot of need for her, to be honest. There are quite a lot of other turn hoggers anyway, and we do also have of course Tidus coming up in, I believe, in August as well. So I don't really foresee many people really using Shelke all that much, but if you are someone who really likes her and you've been using her, then why not. This brings us to the end of the video. In summary, I'll be planning to use tickets for Prishe LD. I plan to skip Yuna's banner. I'll be using tickets for Lulu's LD, and lastly I'll be skipping Sice altogether. As always, I hope the video has been helpful, and if you liked the content, please leave a like, comment or subscribe. It really helps a lot. Till then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!